This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Vasilevskiy mentioned he has the 2 OT winners. There's Nurse across the line to step left circle. Nurse, shoot, save made, rebound loose in front.
What a save!
Get Vasilevskiy, it looks like an open net. Kucherov the other way, right side Raddysh with Guentzel across the line. Raddysh for Guentzel, score! Guentzel! Jake Guentzel wins it after Vasilevskiy made an absolutely miraculous save.
Yeah, that whole thing was like slow motion. He makes the save, makes the second save, and then, the puck's just sitting there. And I don't know, who was it, Vasilevskiy? And it's one of those, it might be so open, you're just maybe take it for granted. And I think, Vasi Scorpion did a little bit and knocked it out because, he doesn't do that, it's in the net. So, that kind of is the beauty of overtime. It's, what do we say? It's snatching victory from the jaws of defeat. That's what we did. And then the play the other way, to move it up, Raddy makes a great pass over to Gens, and Gens in that area is pretty darn good. So pretty exciting 10 seconds there.
You think? Man. That is a highlight reel save is probably underselling. It reminded me of the save he had against the Maple Leafs. Do you remember that one a few years ago? It was kind of the Scorpion save.
I think Coop actually referred to the one last night. He scorpioned it or something. That's going to go down in the kind of hierarchy of memorable Vasilevskiy saves, and that one against Toronto that you mentioned is one of them. The one he made against Kopitar, putting the glove behind his back.
Oh, yeah.
Is another one. This one may be the best of the three, though, of those three, just because of, the one he made against Toronto was, in the middle of the game, I think. The one he made against Kopitar was in the first period. I remember that. This one saved the game.
It did.
Now, was it, game 5 of a playoff game or a playoff series? No. But the fact that he made that save, literally saved the game, and then fueled the counterattack, and the Lightning scored the winning goal right after it. I mean,
and that's where the 3-on-3
kind of a Hollywood script, if you will.
For sure. You have that open ice in 3-on-3, so being able to make that save and then transition pretty quickly to going on offense is a little easier to do. Coop was right about Raddysh's pass, and look, the streak that Guentzel's on, his ability to finish is pretty incredible. There's a lot of different directions we can go in this game. I would just give you 30,000-foot view, partner, and then I want your thoughts. We are taping today's show. Lightning go on the road. They'll be taking on the Caps tomorrow, so that'll be a
They've
fun
gotten
game.
hot, and they're scoring goals, which was really their one big problem at the start of the year, and they seem to have corrected that.
Ovechkin had a big night, so he's starting to score a little bit. So that'll be interesting. Anytime Tom Wilson's on the ice, it's always fun. 30,000.
Jake Evans out of the game last night with a big hit, by the way. Actually, I don't know if he knocked him out of the game. I saw the highlight, and I saw Evans go down the tunnel. Maybe he came back. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I have to look at that.
Yeah.
But you have to be aware. 30,000-foot view, you had talked to our buddy, Jack Michaels, was it after the second period, and he basically was saying this is the best the Oilers have looked since,
second game of the year. They dominated Vancouver in the second game of the year. I mean, I think the final was 3-1, but shots were 37-15. So that was a complete game for Edmonton. And I'll let you continue. I'm not sure this was a complete game for Edmonton through 2 periods, but what it was an A+++ defensive performance through 2 periods, given everything that led into the game, their horrible start to the year defensively, back-to-back, getting in at 3 a.m, all of it. For them to play as well as they did defensively in the first 40 minutes was remarkable, and they deserve high marks for that. Go ahead.
No, I think you're right, and I think take that with our analysis that Edmonton played very well, probably a big reason why the Lightning were fumbling pucks and just struggling to connect on anything. But let's say the Lightning were off as well, not playing their best game. I mean, it was tough for Cooch finding any type of rhythm, and I'm singling him out just because it was noticeable, for me at least, that, and I think everybody kind of felt that same way. Every player, it felt like the puck was just off, or it was exploding off sticks. There was no rhythm. I credit Edmonton, give them credit. I mentioned in the pregame, their season has been off kilter, but the sense of urgency, we wouldn't have been surprised if it was pretty high last night, all things considered, and it felt like it was. I mean, did their goaltender have to make a ton of great saves? Probably not, and that's because I think Edmonton defended really, really well. But Edmonton played really well. The Lightning were off, but this still was a one-goal game heading into the third period. So the Lightning, how many times have we talked about this over the years, partner, when we've been doing shows where maybe the Lightning, haven't found their footing yet. Maybe their first period was a bit off. Maybe they get dominated, and you only see that they're down by a goal, and you're saying to yourself, okay, there's enough firepower here for this team to at least come away with points. And I don't know if this game, if it was played early in the year, and I say early, first couple of weeks, 3 weeks, they don't come away with points. They found a way, thanks in large part to Vasi, who was really, really good. But then the return of Nick Paul comes in, and he makes a play.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I looked at this game. We're going to get into the nuances of it, but Edmonton played really well. The Lightning, in many ways, took their best shot, had a puncher's chance in that third. One of their guys, meaning the Lightning's, makes a play, and the elite goaltending of Vasilevskiy allowed them the ability to at least get points. They end up getting 2, which is probably the best case scenario in that circumstance. But I think this was a good win from that perspective, because you have some of these games throughout the course of a season where we got 2 points. Nobody's going to ask us how at the end of the year, but this felt good. Much better winning than losing, for sure.
Yeah, what's interesting? I felt the same way that you did, how you assessed the Lightning's play in the first 2 periods, which was kind of like not much was happening, and it felt like they were not quite skating in quicksand, but just like having a hard time connecting the dots. And I do think Edmonton had a lot to do with that. But you heard Coop's post-game comments. I know you did, because you played it on the last call. And he was actually quite optimistic about the third period before the third period began, and was saying like he was sitting in the coach's office really liking the Lightning's game. So he had a different feel than I think we did up top. He actually said, I felt better about going into the third period of this Edmonton game than I did in the Vancouver game, where his team was up 2-1. Now, look, they dipped in the second period offensively in that Vancouver game, but I still maintain, like, they didn't give up much in the first 2 periods to Vancouver, and you like to think up 2-1 that they would have been able to close that game out. But he has a different feel being on the ice, or at ice level, I should say, behind the bench, finger on the pulse of his team, and he felt they were going to deliver a third period, and he actually liked a lot of parts of their game. I didn't. I mean, I'm being honest, in the first 2 periods, I didn't really like a lot of the Lightning's game, but as I've said already a couple of times, I think Edmonton had a lot to do with that. So what did Edmonton do so well? Edmonton was aggressive at the right time. So if you were going to basically aggressively come at somebody with the puck, you better make sure that you're not putting yourself out of position. We talk about that sometimes with an aggressive penalty kill. The Oilers are aggressive all over the ice, and they were anticipating where the puck was going. They were just on it. Like they were so dialed in playing without the puck that every time a Lightning player got the puck, it was almost like they had no time to do anything. Or they hesitated just a minute, which allowed the Oilers to close on them. Or they fumbled the puck, which happened a lot too. But when you're under pressure, sometimes you do fumble pucks. So it was just a little bit of a, they had a lot of stops and starts in the first 2 periods. The first period, they were downright bad. And Coop even acknowledged that. He said, I didn't like our start. They had a turnover early in the game. Draisaitl's got a great stick. He's got a long reach, not as long of a reach as Curtis Douglas, but a long enough reach. I think he's got a very wide blade. I've heard that about Draisaitl. I mean, I've never gone down and measured his sticks, but he was able to anticipate where Lilleberg was going with the puck and made a very good play to intercept it. And then the Oilers were in the middle of a change. So Frederic came off the bench. Lightning kind of lost him because he came all the way from the other side of the red line, got open in the slot. He drilled it. Like that was a tremendous scoring chance. I'm not sure the Lightning actually had a chance as good as Frederic's for the entirety of the game, maybe until the Guentzel overtime winner.
Yeah.
So he finished. He's had a tough start to the year. He only had one goal, and that was his only point up until last night. So now he has 2 goals. So the Oilers got the lead, but they actually built momentum from that goal and carried play for much of the first period. And Vasilevskiy made a handful of high-level saves, we'll say, to keep the game 1-0. I remember he made one on McDavid when McDavid split the D and ended up coming alone on the goalie, which is certainly he could score from there. We've seen it many, many times. And Vasi made other tough saves. Oilers had a power play in the first period, and they had some activity kind of late in the power play. So it stayed 1-0, but the Lightning were swimming upstream. The Oilers were pressing the attack. By the time we got to the second period, it kind of settled into more of a territorial game where neither team really generated much. And again, the Oilers were coming off this tough back-to-back. So, I mean, for them to just continue pressing the gas was probably unrealistic. But what they did very well was defend without the puck. So I felt that in the first 2 periods, they had the puck a lot more than the Lightning. The Lightning squandered 3 power play chances. Yeah, those 3 power play chances all came in the first 2 periods. They did have a couple of looks, but I'm not sure any of them were tremendous chances. And so you're going into the third period, at least I'm not John Cooper, so I was just like, they're going to have to find a way to start breaking down the Oilers a little bit, or the Oilers will start to get tired because of this tough scheduling situation. And maybe a little bit of both. What I noticed the Lightning did well, and it started in the very first shift of the third period, is they picked up their physical play, honestly, and they started really hammering the Oilers' skaters. I shouldn't just say defenders. The forwards got hit too. So the Lightning took the body, which allowed them to start winning more puck battles. And when they started winning more puck battles, they got a little bit more in sync. They started moving the puck more quickly. They weren't getting closed on quite as fast. So they had a little bit more time to try and do some things. And they had a couple of very good looks on the very first shift of the third period with Hagel, Cirelli, and Kucherov. Coop really put the lines in a blender in the third period, almost to the point that it like Douglas didn't play a lot, although Douglas had a shift fairly late in the game with Gordon Gergensons where they were out on the ice for like a full minute. So, I mean, his time on ice was helped by that one shift, but Coop was mixing things up. But he did have Kucherov for much of the game with Hagel and Cirelli. They had a very good shift to start the third period. But I'm not sure that the Lightning, even though they had a lot of possession in the third period, were able to keep generating those chances around the net like they did in the first shift of the third period. They had some. We can get into what Coop did with James. About halfway through the period, he moved James onto a line with Point and Guentzel. I remember Paul started the game playing with those guys.
Right.
I liked that line. That line had some jump. James actually set up Guentzel for one of their better chances in the third period. The save was made by Pickard. But that helped too. So the Lightning were dictating play. But they weren't getting the sorts of chances that Frederic got. So you're kind of like, somebody needs to make a play. And it was Nick Paul. I mean, you talk about a movie script. I mean, like, the guy hasn't played since last April in the playoffs. He's got this brutal, like, rehab. He's by himself. It's completely unfun. You got to put in the time, put in the work. You're getting closer. I mean, they thought early to mid-November. His first game was November 20th. So it was more in the latter part of November. He had to, like, extend that time frame just when he was ready. He comes in and he scores a huge, huge goal. The Lightning were a shift away from pulling Vasilevskiy, the extra attacker. So they were getting their 6-on-5 unit ready. Clearly, Paul was not going to be part of that unit because he was out there with Gonçalves and Gord when they scored the goal. So Paul scores on one of the few shots where the Lightning had a chance to shoot and put it up. Pickard was stopping everything middle down. Everything was middle down. If they shot up, it missed the net. Paul goes up. Beats Pickard high glove. So there's like 2.5 minutes left. Edmonton takes a long time sending their players out. I'm just like, are you kidding me? Is this going to be another disallowed goal because the Lightning were like a millimeter offside? And Edmonton thought about it long enough that the Oilers called their timeout. That's why Edmonton called the timeout, not to like, all right, it's 1-1, guys. Let's set our lineup for the last 2.5 minutes. They're like, we need to look at this more. Let's take our timeout and see if this was offside. It was so close, Greg. So what happened was Gonçalves is in the zone. The play starts in the offensive zone for the Lightning. They're in the offensive zone. Edmonton clears it. It's back at center ice. Paul and Gord are out in the neutral zone. Gonçalves is still in the offensive end. He's skating to get out of the offensive zone. The puck gets reversed. Paul brings it across the blue line on one side. It's all the way on the other side of the ice. Gonçalves is scrambling to get out of the offensive zone, which he has to do before Paul brings it across the blue line. And while I didn't see a lot of replays on it, Eric had a little bit of this information in his article. I think what happened was the puck actually crossed the blue line before Gonçalves completely got out. But the puck was not on Nick Paul's stick blade. It was very, very close. Like, it's not like he just pushed it ahead and then skated onto it, but it's one of those stick handling moves where this was the Makar play that we talked about from the playoffs a few years ago. On a tag up, the guy who's entering the offensive zone can kind of push the puck forward. As long as he is not in control of the puck in that it's on his stick blade, and he's not across the blue line completely before the guy who's trying to get out is out, as long as he doesn't touch it until that guy is out, the puck can cross the blue line first. I think that's what happened here. It was close enough that Edmonton was like, we can't challenge and lose this challenge and then go on the penalty kill with 2.5 minutes left. So this was a coin toss. I'm really glad that the officials didn't have to look at it, but Edmonton was like, we're not going to challenge. So it's 1-1. The game goes into overtime, and then, you describe what happened in the OT. But look, it was a good third period for the Lightning. I think they
much better than the first two.
They raised their level for sure. I mean, the stats bear that out.
Yes.
They outshot the Oilers 14-4 in the third period. Just by comparison, shot attempts in the first period, Lightning were outshot 11-8, but shot attempts in the first period, 25-12 Edmonton. Shot attempts in the third period, 26-12 Lightning. So almost a mirror image, or whatever you want to call it, like polar opposite of what we had in the first period, and I think that's fair. But to your point, I'm not sure Pickard, he made good saves. I'm not sure that he had to pull a rabbit out of his hat, which is, again, a credit to how well the Oilers played defensively. And there is no way, what I was saying to Jack when I saw him after the second period, I'm like, there is no way the Oilers played this way earlier in the year to come in with the 29th ranked defense. He's like, absolutely not. He's like, those are their best two defensive periods of the year and probably their best game since the second game of the year. So the schedule maybe caught up with them a little bit, but they battled. And so if you're an Oilers fan, you're like, this is the sort of game that they need to play every game, right?
Hard to do.
When you have, it's hard to do, but I mean, they can do it. I know there's a lot of talk of goaltending. Like, hey, the Oilers need to find a goalie. And I mean, like, Stuart Skinner was, it wasn't that long ago. Well, first of all, they made the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row. So their goaltending has been good enough in the playoffs, to get them to the fourth round. But so much of goaltending is like, what chances are you giving your goalie to deal with? the Oilers really helped out Pickard last night quite a bit because he was not under siege. And, that is probably what Chris Knobloch is like. That's our template. Like, we know Leon and Connor are going to be contributing points. And, under normal circumstances when we're not getting in at 3 a.m, maybe we have a little bit more jump and we can do more offensively. But we need to start defending like we did against the Lightning.
Right.
And they showed that they can do it, even as they had injuries, right? Like Wallman got hurt twice. Regula got hit in the ear, fortunately, or the face. Fortunately, he was able to return. They lost Nurse for 17 minutes due to an instigation penalty, but they still, it didn't matter who was out there. They all pulled on the rope. So I was very impressed with what Edmonton was able to show last night.
What was the
And the Lightning were fortunate. I mean, let's be honest, the Lightning were fortunate to get that game to overtime. And then once they got it to overtime, they got the second point.
I was just going to say the ice time, because we talked about that on the last call. I don't know if you heard any of that conversation, but
no.
McDavid's ice time is...
Well, he and Draisaitl are 1-2 among forwards in average ice time coming in to the game.
Coming in, he's playing 23.5 minutes. That's about a minute and a half up from last year at 22. Now, look, each year is different. I understand it. Is that sustainable, that type of... those minutes that he's playing, because those are hard minutes. Brian did I guess there was a website
that I heard. I heard
these stats.
He skated 6 more miles than Kucherov in the last 10 games.
But there's no doubt there's more. Is it wrong to say it feels like more effort with McDavid in the terms? He's circling everywhere. He was talking about Kucherov. Kucherov kind of goes through spaces. I think he paces himself. It feels like McDavid is just boom, going around and around, because obviously he's an elite skater and he's faster than most people, if not everybody. But it does feel like the minutes he plays are pretty hard. And this year is not the same as last year or 3 years ago for that team. And I guess the question I would have, and maybe nobody has an answer to this, if he's playing a minute and a half more than he was last year, and they're kind of really leaning on Draisaitl and McDavid, it's kind of like the 1 year you talked about where, was it the year after the Cup for the Lightning in 2004, where they just...
06, 07, they had their top 4.
And they just kind of rode those guys to the ground. I wonder with Edmonton, again, we're 20 games into the season, so take that for what it is, but is this a sustainable winning formula for them to ride their 2 best players as much as maybe they are? Mm-hmm. And can it last? And can you make a deep run with that type of output that they're producing? It was just something that Brian brought up, and it was kind of interesting looking at the numbers. I'm like, maybe, are they playing a lot? All things considered.
Part of this is not that much different from the way that they've kind of run their team. So the first reaction I have is no, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Their minutes are up slightly, I would say, but they are usually, and they are McDavid and Draisaitl. They are, if they aren't 1-2, they are usually 2 of the top 5 among forwards in average ice time. So it's not like they went from 18 minutes a game and then all of a sudden they're playing 22, 23 minutes a game on average. So they are used to playing a lot. My cautionary note is more related to circumstances. So both these guys have had 2 long playoff runs consecutively, followed by 2 short off seasons. Last year for McDavid, he didn't get any break because he was in the 4 Nations. And this year, both guys are going to the Olympics. So it's not so much that they're playing a lot. It's that they're playing a lot on top of everything else that's been going on, right? If they had a first-round exit last year and he had a regular offseason, maybe this would be it's the cumulative effect. That's probably what I'm wondering about. You're right. McDavid expends a lot of energy skating over the course of a game just because that's his game. But that's his game. That's what he does. He's used to doing that. He's able to do that because he is such an efficient skater. So, I mean, you've run a marathon, I've run a marathon. Like there is no way during my best running days that I would have even come in the neighborhood of some of these people that are like winning their age groups, right? They are just wired and built differently. They are just able to go faster. Mm-hmm. And they always go faster. I'm not talking about skating, I'm talking about running, like your mile pace, which you can track. You know, on my best running days, I was probably like 8 minutes. You know, it took me, if I pushed, I would be a little under 8. You know, I mean, like the marathoners, they're doing 5, right? But even forget like Olympic marathoners, right. You know, like the people that are winning age groups that I was in, they were like running, you know, 6.5, you know, over 26 miles. Like McDavid is built like that in the hockey world. Sure. Like his skating is so, like he's just a freak of nature because he's such a great skater and he's so efficient. So I think that his body can handle doing that. Even on the power play where guys can be more static, he's moving a lot. So I think it's less about, yeah, he's playing a little bit more. But I think if they had the depth that Chris Knoblauch was like, I want complete, total depth. I want everyone healthy. I want to be able to roll 4 lines whenever I want. Yeah. I still think McDavid and Draisaitl would be well over 20 minutes just because they're 2 of the best players in the world. And why wouldn't you use them? And they can handle it. But what they hope is going to be a 3rd straight long playoff run on top of everything that's come already. Who knows? This extra minute, Greg, may be related to the fact that Edmonton has had a very, very rocky start to the year. So it's like they're losing, they're down in games. Knoblauch's like, I need a goal, right? You know, like but last night they were up and McDavid still played 24 minutes. I mean, he had the overtime in there. I'm not sure how much he played in overtime. He may have added a minute. I think they were out there for the first minute in overtime. So let's say before overtime, McDavid finished with 24:06. Let's say he was about 23 minutes before overtime. You know, that's high. Maybe it's a little too high given the fact that they weren't chasing. Did he need to play him as much? But you've got a racehorse. You got a stallion, right? McKinnon's the same way. McKinnon expends a lot of energy. Maybe he doesn't expend the energy, but he is like his engine is going when he's on the ice, but he can handle it. So the 6 more miles, though, is an interesting. So what Brian said was like you can track how much a skater travels over the course of a game on these advanced stats. Edge is what it's called. So in the last 10 games prior to last night, and both guys play a lot, of course. Kucherov is also over 20 minutes a game. McDavid had actually skated in distance 6.5 more miles or something like that than Kucherov, but that's a lot due to the fact that McDavid, when he's on the ice, is constantly in motion. Kucherov isn't. Kucherov like angles, finds his spots, you know, kind of shifts. McDavid is, you know, zooming, right? So
for sure. And I think, you know, when you take a look at the Oilers, you know, I'm sure the way things are going for their team, I would have to take a look at the first 2 periods and say, can you build off of this?
Yeah.
I think that's probably the mindset as the coach. And
don't you think you have to give their game last night, though, a little bit of a, you know, an asterisk because they got it at 3 I mean, this was going to, we call a scheduled loss, right? Now they get a rest day today, and they're playing the Panthers tomorrow. Right. If they are not up for that game, I will be shocked. This is the team that beat you and kept you from a cup the last 2 years. Let's see how they play against Florida tomorrow night.
You know, I think in general, that analysis would be spot on. The only thing is they played so well the first 2 periods. You're kind of like, did they just find another gear? You know, and I mean, they basically had, you know, they got in late, but they didn't have a morning skate, right? I think they kind of bagged that and just relaxed. So maybe, you know, maybe that helps a little bit. And I think also, too, you know, what we talked about before, they're probably, you know, we always talk about the Lightning needing to be ready to go for a game. depending on the opponent. I mean, they should for every opponent. We know that. But certain teams, you're kind of circling on the calendar and saying that's going to be a tough one. They got to be ready to go against this team, or they're going to be taken to the woodshed. I think there might have been some of that with Edmonton. Look, we're going into Tampa. Like, we got to show our best. I mean,
Jack said that too.
And Jack said,
I think the Oilers know that they need to be at their best, or else they could get embarrassed off the ice, which is what happened when they played Colorado about a week ago.
And for sure. And he even, went a step further on our show, is that, he wouldn't have been surprised if Kucherov had himself a game, because he always gets up for Connor McDavid. So take that mindset and bring it a little further out when you start talking about the teams in general. I mean, I think anytime Edmonton's on the schedule, and you can name 10 or 15 of these teams, that there is a little extra something. I mean, it could be, Vegas, it could be Colorado, out west. Certainly we know about the Florida Panthers. I think the Washington Capitals maybe grab your attention. Anybody in the division, of course, the Torontos, in Boston's. I mean, those teams you want to have you get up for a little bit more. And I think for Edmonton, this is one of those where it was like, look, I understand circumstances surrounding this game may not be beneficial to us, but we've got to find a way to dig deep, because if we don't, there's a chance that this good team is going to win 5-0 and embarrass a little bit more. So probably willed themselves a bit.
I agree.
And those first two periods were very impressive. So if I'm them, I am building off of this, heading into the next game and saying, okay, we found something here. Can we play this as much as we can for the whole game? And maybe they do. The other thing, too, is, let's be fair. Had they not been playing somebody other than Andrei Vasilevskiy, they probably get 2 points. Let's be very clear about that. I mean, we're talking about Edmonton, and Tampa Bay's third period was much better. But if you're Edmonton and you're looking at that, you get that game to overtime, I think, one, you'll take the point. You'll say that feels pretty good. But if they play any other goaltender, there's a good chance they're feeling really good about their game when they wake up.
A second goal at any point before Paul tied it might have signaled game over.
Yeah.
I mean, even the Lightning were playing better in the third, and they couldn't get it. So I do think some of their push went away in terms of attacking, just as the game progressed, based on circumstances. But I'm looking at their roster. So look, I mentioned this yesterday, and we can kind of wrap up on Edmonton and get to fan questions, and maybe look at Washington, which, that's going to be a very challenging game, because it looks like the Caps have snapped their game into gear. But when I look at Edmonton, so yes, their top couple of guys are leading the way. Nugent Hopkins is injured right now, but he's at a point per game. Problem is he's minus 11. So, he's been out there for some good things offensively, but more things have gone wrong defensively when he has been out there. And Roslovic has chipped in 7 goals. That's a bonus for them. But two guys who I think they should be able to lean on more for offense are Henrique and Frederic. They're good players. They played well last night. And for Trent Frederic to only have 2 goals and 2 total points hurts them. So, yeah, I think it's a lot about what they're going to do defensively. But some of this about, like, why are the top guys playing even more than normal? And this does kind of relate to what we talked about with the Lightning in 06-07 and what I've talked about with Colorado in their years right after their cup in 2022, where they had some departures, and we saw their top guys were all playing, the forwards are all playing over 20 minutes, 5 of them. It's like, you need a key shift. Who are you going to go to if you're the coach? And you keep tapping the same guys on the shoulder, right? They start getting more from Frederic, more from Henrique. I don't mean to pick on them. Mangiapane has had a brutal year in terms of plus minus. Like, they start picking things up. I think that'll help Edmonton. And getting Hyman back is a huge addition. Yeah. I mean, he almost scored in overtime too. He went to the net, and Vasi made 3 in a row, and Hyman had the first chance. It wasn't a clean shot. It almost bounced off of him, but it would have counted had it gone in.
Yeah, I agree.
The last thing I'll say about the Roslovic play, Vasi, and people have probably seen the highlight now, but Vasi times it and lifts his left pad, right?
Right.
If Roslovic slides that on the ice, it's in the net.
You're right. You're right.
If he doesn't try and lift it, you're like, well, why did Vasilevskiy lift his pad, right? But I don't know if Vasilevskiy's not only a scorpion, but maybe a mind reader too. Or he just figured that the guy was going to try and lift it. So he played the odds, right? And he guessed right. I also wonder, would it if the pad had been along the ice, did Vasilevskiy lift it enough? If it wouldn't have cleared the pad, it may have hit the top and still gone in. So Vasilevskiy definitely made the right choice lifting his pad because it hit the middle of the pad when he lifted it.
And again, Vasilevskiy is probably thinking, if I just get this puck on net, this is a goal. I mean, that's the other thing to this.
Right.
I mean,
he sees Vasilevskiy's pad is on the ice, so he knows I have to lift this.
And that's the right play.
Right.
And, I mean, the guy makes best save of the year. I think
it's one of Vasilevskiy's best saves in his career.
Yeah. I mean, what's that?
So, I mean, I haven't seen every other remarkable save that's happened in the NHL this year, but I'm hard-pressed to think of another save that was that spectacular that came at such a crucial point in a game.
Right.
And then fueled the winning goal in the other direction.
Right. So, that's, the great thing about sporting events is that you just never know what you're going to see because it's live. Nothing's scripted, at least what we think for the most part. But
yes, Reef Rum is scripted, though. I see you looking at it. You want to read
you want me to read that?
Yeah.
I was actually going to my X feed, but let me pull up the Reef Rum read.
It is scripted. By now, you should know it by heart. Just don't ask me to read it. I hear you say it every show, but I don't think I've committed it to memory.
Listen, I am not memorizing that, but I'm close. Tonight, enjoy some Reef Rum, smooth, versatile, and now pouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a tropical wave or a lightning mule and taste why fans are switching. Reef Rum is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Reef Rum by name. Go Bolts, and enjoy responsibly. All right, what do we got here? Thomas, by the way, from Lutz, did stop by the last call yesterday.
Nice.
And I told him we appreciate his participation, and he enjoys the show all the time. So
thank you, Thomas.
I do have some questions. He got this in just a little bit ago. He said, ever since the Ranger game, a switch has gone off in Vasi, and you can see the determination. Love it. Said incredible game by him. Above elite. What happened to our forecheck? Too many passes again. Paul showed just shoot the puck.
That was driving Phil crazy last night, even as they had more of a shooting mentality in the third period. He was letting his emotions turn into vocal disgust as the Lightning were passing up shots and then not getting anything out of it. It happened more in the first two periods, I think, than in the third, but it happened some in the third, and he was getting very irritated. I would actually say, Thomas, while Vasilevskiy had a rough game statistically against the Rangers, and there's no sugarcoating that, he was the victim of some bad breaks, but he gave up. I mean, the one that he stumbled, where Trocheck scored, that's on him. I think his good play, or better than good, predates the Ranger game. I mean, what is he now, like 8-2 in his last 10 or something like that? I saw the stat. It's something like however many of his starts he's allowed 2 or less. So, in the Lightning have actually had a pretty good defensive year, except they've had a couple of games where they've had some big goals against that have skewed their numbers. This is different than Edmonton, where I'm like, okay, Edmonton gave them 9 to Colorado, but that one game does not explain 29th in the NHL. The Lightning have had the odd, tough game here and there. I mean, 2 of them recently. They gave up 7 to the Rangers and 6 to Vancouver, but I mean, they're still certainly in the top half, and they may even be. I haven't checked today to see if they've sneaked back into the top 10. And a lot of that is the goaltending that they're receiving. I think they've gotten very good goaltending this year, and I think Vasi has elevated even more from the start of the year. But I would say, Thomas, predating the Ranger game. The Ranger game was a blip where it was a combination of some bad breaks against Vasilevskiy, not a high shot volume, but a big goals against number, and then he had to own a couple of those himself. But that was kind of the exception. I think he has played quite well going back over the last, whatever we want to say, month, 6 weeks. Oh, that's going back to the start of the year. So let's say a month or so.
Let's get into this a little bit here, and then we'll get back to some more questions. Where Paul slotted in last night, where you think this may go. And, we saw James get elevated a little bit more, which Chief and I were kind of debating. And he said, well, look, if he's going to play in the top six,
that was during the second. I heard you guys talking about that. Was in the second intermission, though, before he was elevated.
And I felt like, and I didn't say this to Chief, but my thing was like, well, who cares if he just plays center? You can have multiple centermen on a line. If that means James is starting off on the league, that's okay. My point stands, though. I'd like to see James in a top six. John Cooper, I think, when you hear him talk about James, he I think values what he brings to the table, even though he's a young player and doesn't have many games under his belt. That being said, starting Paul on a wing, which was interesting, because working his way back from that injury, do you want to give him all those responsibilities? But we do know he has position flexibility to go up and down the lineup as well. I think ideally you would like to have Nick Paul as your third line center. I'll use third line for the sake of being simple in this exercise, because I think he provides some more depth and really evens out the lines. I personally would get Gonçalves out of the top six. That's just, even if you think, well, look, he played on the third line a little bit, he was with Bjork. Oh, fine. I don't think he's done enough to warrant being in a top six at this point. I think James has. I want to see that. If you want to say a little more permanently, fine. But I think once Paul works himself back into game shape, and he took obviously big strides in doing that yesterday, I'd like to see him drive the third line. James elevates to the second, or whomever, in the top six. And then you just kind of figure out, is it Bjorkstrand, Paul, Gonçalves? Is it somebody else? Combination of those three. But partner, where did you see Paul last night? Were you surprised he started on a wing? And do you kind of feel that same way when we start talking about what the top nine looks like specifically for the Lightning? Because I think we think the fourth line, once Holmberg comes back, I think that line stays together because I think it showed pretty well.
So to me, this is less a question about Nick Paul and more a question about Dominic James. And really the question isn't about Dominic James. It's about what John Cooper decides to do with Dominic James. Because I loved him on the line with Point and Guentzel in the third period. I mean, if you were wondering, can this guy play with Point and Guentzel? What we saw last night in limited minutes, and they probably had maybe 5 shifts together. I can actually go back and next time you talk, I'll listen, but I'll actually look and see how many shifts they had together. It was in the third period. He put James with Point and Guentzel, and they clicked. Yep. I thought it worked. I mean, sometimes you don't need to, as you often say, Greg, complicate it. Like, you watch the 3 players, they worked.
Yeah.
Like, the combo worked. So always trust Eric to ask the questions we want asked in postgame. He asked Coop about James and putting him on that line. And Coop was very measured in his response. Now, what he says to the media may be a little different to what he says to his coaching staff, what he decides to do. To me, it sounded like this was a one-off because they needed a little spark offensively to try and get the game tied. And fans would be like, well, what do you mean? And it's like the other side of this, which Coop brought up, which is why I'm saying to me this sounded more like a one-off, was he's new to the NHL, he's learning the game or something. He didn't say learning the game, but I mean, Steve can probably find that quote. And so I'm not trying to put words in Coop's mouth, but Coop was basically like, I kind of wanted to see how it would work. And he liked it, but he didn't say, we think we found something here, or, he probably wouldn't say this. He's earned a spot in the next game. He's a guy who looks like we could really use in the top 6. I have said, like, James is a center. Seems like he does very well at center. I am very intrigued to see him in the top 6. Now, we know Kucherov is not going to probably stay with Hagel and Cirelli for the rest of the year. At some point, Kucherov is going to go back with Point. Does that mean that James isn't on that line? Maybe, but maybe James goes with Hagel and Cirelli, which is something that you have talked about. So they can put Nick Paul in a variety of places,
Yes.
and he will do fine. He can play wing with Point and Guentzel. He can play center. He can be in the bottom six. He can be in the top six. He can penalty kill. He can power play, if power play is a verb. And he can do very well in a variety of different roles and being used in a variety of ways, and we've seen that from him. James has, and this is where Coop spoke very highly of him, he's got the brain, I think he said. I remember him saying that. I was listening while I was driving home. And I think he can play in the top six, and I think he will help the top six. So if I'm going to craft a lineup, what I would say is when Holmberg comes back, as much as I like seeing Douglas in the lineup, assuming there are no subsequent injuries and the Lightning don't decide to go 11-7, the way I kind of see this playing out, Holmberg is very close. I think when Holmberg comes back, you reunite that line with Gord, Holmberg, and Gergensons because they were so effective for the Lightning. There's no reason not to put them together. The only reason that they're not together now is that Holmberg got hurt. Okay, so that's a line. If you're going to move Dominic James into the top six and keep him there, I don't know about the line combinations. All I know is these are your six players. Point, Guentzel, Kucherov, Hagel, Cirelli, James. That leaves the third line of Paul and Bjorkstrand and Gonsalves. I don't know if it's going to play out that way. Let's see if James starts the Washington game in a top six role. If I were a betting man, based on what I heard from Coop, I would say no. But what do I know? I mean, I might be wrong. All I'm saying is that I thought he complemented Point and Guentzel very, very well. You know what he does, besides the fact that he buzzes all over the ice and he's kind of a gnat, right, for the other team, and he can read plays. He knows, he seems to know where the puck is going and gets there. And if the puck comes to him, he's usually holding on to it. Yeah. And we've talked about his speed and all of that. He makes plays quickly.
Yeah.
He doesn't rush plays, but the puck is on his stick, the puck's off his stick. He can hold on to it, but when he wants to deliver a pass, this is the way I'm going to say it. When Dominic James wants to deliver a pass, he knows where the puck is going to go before the puck actually gets to him.
Yeah, that's fair.
He's already decided what he's going to be doing next before he does it.
That goes back to the high.
And that was what we saw in that Guentzel chance that was stopped by Pickard. Because the puck was along the boards, it got held in. James was behind the net, but kind of to the side, so it's not like he was directly behind the net. And it came to him behind the net. He didn't hesitate. Like, it was on his stick, it was off his stick, right to Guentzel in a prime scoring area. That's what we've seen from him. So he can be a facilitator. That's why he makes so many good plays all over the ice. Because he's delivering a pass to somebody in a very advantageous position and doing it quickly. Steve has the clip, so I don't know if we want to.
Go ahead, Steve.
Let's hear what
Dom.
Dom plays with pace. He's got a skill set. He's got a brain. He's got a lot of, he's got to compete. He's just learning the NHL game. And so, to spot put him in there every once in a while, I feel good about it. Who's going to give us a little push on that line? And I thought, the first couple shifts, he went out with those guys. They were inches away from scoring. So kept him there. And it's another lefty guy that you have Point and Cooch out there, or Point and James out there as lefty righties. And so, I don't know, it was a feeling and kind of worked out.
See what I mean? So, he complimented him, but he also said he's learning the NHL game. Spot put him in there. That's the sort of language that resonated with me, that this may not be something he's just going to keep, but he knows he can do it, and he may go back to it. But I think he was looking for something, and it was a feeling, so he did it, and he liked what he saw. But this doesn't sound like he's like, yes, we are going to, make this permanent. Nothing with Coop is permanent, but more permanent kind of change in our mindset about where this guy is going to slot in. I'll just say this, Greg, it's coming. I mean, this guy is a player. He is a player.
I agree with you.
His role is going to grow with the Lightning. Fans may be like, well, we want to see it now. Like, Coop's the head coach. He has a way different feeling of the pulse and a much more accurate feeling of the pulse of the team than we do. This is what I was talking about, his feeling in the coach's office after the second period. So the Lightning are going to handle things the way that they want to handle it. But this to me, there's only one destination here. This guy is going to be playing more and more and more with the Lightning, assuming that, he can stay healthy. He had to miss a little bit of time, and it's probably a little weird for him playing with the full shield, which he had a cage in college. He's probably still not feeling great from the effects of that puck off the face, but I think the Lightning have a gem here. I know the stats don't really show it at this point, but just watching him play, his role is going to grow at some point.
Let me make this comparison, because I think the numbers to a degree are similar in terms of the floodgates haven't opened for both players, but one is passing the eye test, the other one is not. What did the Lightning do with Gage Gonsalves at this point? He's got 1 goal in 20 games. A lot of that was in the top 6. This is also on the heels of Bjorkstrand really struggling to score and Point struggling to score. Mm-hmm. You have 3 guys in your lineup right now that have a total of how many goals? We think Point is going to get back to where he is.
Yeah.
We think there's enough evidence there that Bjorkstrand, look, he may not hit 25 this year because he's gotten off to such a slow start, but honestly, it'd probably be a win if he got to 17 to 20.
He needs to see a puck go in. I mean, he's fumbling pucks in a way that I've never seen him fumble pucks before, either with the Lightning or previously when he was with other teams.
What do they do with Gage Gonsalves? Because I think part of what makes him so attractive is that when we saw him the second half of last year was that, he was being noticeable offensively. He was making things happen. I don't consider him a great goal scorer. I know some people have talked about his shot. I actually think he's more of a distributor, playmaker. I think he has some of those characteristics to be hard coming back, on a back check and being responsible defensively. I think there are things in his game that clearly the organization liked and we liked based off of what he did last year. Mm-hmm. But I also don't think he's earned enough cred in this league where you pencil him in the lineup every night. I just don't think we're there. And we're sitting here talking about how Dominic James is, kind of doing a lot of things game in and game out that's opening up our eyes to the point where we're like to see him in the top 6. And I don't know if Gage has taken those steps this year that they thought. Doesn't mean he can't. I'm curious, where does he go? Because you're not going to put him on a 4th line, I don't think. And like James, I think he needs to be in a top 9. But I think to warrant a spot in the lineup, you need to do more. And I'm just curious, we talk about the depth this team does have. Is Gage Gonsalves somebody at some point here that if it doesn't start clicking, you're going to start seeing somebody else in the lineup, and it could be a call-up like a Connor Geekie, or maybe it's a Dylan Duke, or maybe, it's Stahoviak, that they want to bring up. I guess I feel like you're not going to do anything with Bjorkstrand. You're not doing anything with Point. I do think Gonsalves is the one guy because it's still a little bit up in the air where should there be a little bit more potentially competition coming up here to see if you can move that position around and move the ball down the field a little bit more than what you're currently getting. I think it's a fair point because I think we've made such a big deal about this player slumping, that player slumping. And I think for Gonsalves, maybe it didn't get talked about enough. He was kind of put in this role to start the year based off of some good games last year during the second half of the year. But 40 games does not make a career. And I think he needs to find what made him successful this year compared, last year, kind of parlay that into this year. And I'm just kind of curious how this is going to play out for him because at the end it is a production, type league. You gotta show it. So just kind of an initial thought.
Well, and it's possible Holmberg returns tomorrow. Yeah. Possible. The Lightning are scheduled to skate shortly. They do not have a skate scheduled in Washington on Saturday. You and I don't have a show until Monday anyway, when the Lightning have another game at home against the Flyers, which, by the way, is Hockey Fights Cancer Night, which the Lightning have Hockey Fights Cancer Night in Washington, which is the Washington date. Every team gets a date during the month of November. So the Lightning are going to have 2 of these back-to-back. But if Holmberg is ready to return, he's coming in. He may not quite be ready, but he's skated the last couple of times the Lightning have had to skate. So I don't know that if he comes in, Gonçalves goes out, but we'll see. The other thing you can do if you're not going to scratch someone is reduce ice time. But we'll just have to kind of read the tea leaves here and see what the lineup looks like as we move forward here, as guys hopefully start to get healthier.
And again, it's not necessarily I don't think Gage won't be a productive player. He's shown in parts he can. It's more of, I think, hey, the Lightning have talked about all the competition and depth they have at the forward position. Is this one of those instances where you're like, yeah, let's dip and bring to see if we can get
But they have
going.
enough players at the NHL level right now. I mean, they scratched Finley last night, and
And maybe that's
they
where
want
you go.
I think they are interested in seeing him play more too. Now he's a center, so Paul came back who can play center. Finley was scratched. I mean, the Lightning are going to have some healthy extras here, presuming, especially at forward, assuming that they get to full health at forward. The D situation is different. We didn't really get into that today. Hedman's going to be out a couple of weeks. We touched on it a little bit yesterday. McDonough hasn't even started skating yet. So I mean, he is not close. I actually thought the Lightning might go 11-7 yesterday because Chernak was involved in the morning skate but didn't play. So he's the closest of the three to come back. And then you have Crozier on IR where he's going to miss a week. So the Lightning are very banged up on D, less so at forward. Because, if I'm not mistaken, everybody's back now except for Holmberg, right? Yes. So once he returns and he's close, you're going to have some decisions to make about who plays, who sits, and who plays where, and how much each player plays.
I just texted Steve if he had that soundbite. Did you hear Coop speak glowingly of Destu yesterday? I mean, that was like, whoa.
Well, he
really
pulled out
strong on his stick. He's really strong.
Yeah,
and
but he pulled out the top defenseman in all these different leagues too. He must have gotten the memo. I don't know.
We all looked at that like the last call, and we were going around and we were breaking it down with JP and Chief and Brian, and then I finally said, "Was that Destu he mentioned?" Because the question got muffled a little bit.
Yeah,
and
when I first heard it, I'm like, "Did they say Cooch?"
Who's he talking about?
Is he talking about Cooch?
And then
he mentioned defenseman. So
is he praising Destu? Because you know what? Honestly, kudos to Raddysh as well. I mean,
Raddysh is playing so well.
We can go a little longer. I know you got to go. I'm just
27 minutes and change.
Well, this is a guy.
Night.
6 out of the first 13 games. Is that correct, partner? He was in the press box. I mean, he wasn't playing.
Yeah.
And now look, I understand there's multiple defensemen out, so you're going to be playing to a degree by default. But the guy's playing 27 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, again,
and playing a lot with Moser, and JJ Moser has had. I mean, it's been a quieter year, and like Raddysh has been noisy the last few games because he's been so impactful in goals being scored. Moser did have the assist on the Paul goal. He fed it to Paul, but I mean, he just bumped it up the boards. Paul kind of did the rest, but JJ Moser is playing so well, and he and Raddysh have been paired for a lot of this time, where the Lightning have had to revamp the D-core due to injury.
I don't know if shocked was the word, but I mean, again, think
about the Raddysh part. You mean
the Raddysh part, but also Destu. Think about what we're talking about on this show. Two guys most Lightning fans never heard of before the season started, in James and Destu.
Yeah.
And you and I and the coaching staff are having conversations of like, they're not only here to stay, they're going to make an impact on this team.
Yeah, same post-game press conference. Coop referenced both. I think Steve has the clip.
Here's
we
Destu,
can go over a little bit if we need to.
Well, he's a really heady player, and he's super strong in his stick. And so he doesn't, especially in the D zone, there's no panic button with him. He's got poise, composure, and strength. And so you keep all those together. He, 99 times out of 100 makes the right play out of the zone, and he sees it. You can see this guy's, he's a well-developed defenseman, and you see why he's won awards all the way up. He knows the game, and he's starting to figure this one out, and it's helping us.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Isn't it? What do you think? I mean, that is, to me, eye-opening. We can talk about it on Monday. You and I will probably talk about it a little bit.
You come up and you make an impact. Now the key is to maintain it.
Yes.
Like the adrenaline rush, and it can be helpful. Sometimes it can be a little hurtful if you're, too amped up. But the jump, the boost that you get from arriving in the NHL and then having a good start, eventually you settle into, this is my normal. And you hope that you don't have a dip at some point. Now, the fact that he's 27, I think, helps. He's been through kind of the rigors of pro hockey for a number of years, 7 years, right? So I think he is well positioned to be a big-time contributor for the Lightning. I still would like to see him shoot the puck more.
Yes, I don't think we've seen enough of that.
Phil and I have talked about. I mean, he's getting out on power play too, so he's not getting as much of a chance.
Yeah.
But I think he's got it may not be at the level of a Raddysh or a Hedman, but I think he's got a very, very heavy, hard shot that we just haven't seen him use to this point. But that's, I get it. He's trying to make his way here and have his coach talk about him in those terms, right?
Agreed. Phenomenal.
It'll be a test tomorrow for the Lightning.
Yes.
I'll just say this. Washington, so it's the final game in the season series. The first two meetings, though, it was clear. Washington was, for the most part, defending quite well. They were getting great goaltending. They just weren't scoring, and Ovechkin wasn't scoring. Now Ovechkin has started scoring. As a team, they are scoring. They're probably giving up a few more goals than they were earlier, but they're getting the run support, honestly. So it hasn't really hurt them. And they're playing probably their best hockey of the year all around right now. So this will be a challenge for the Lightning. We'll see if Vasilevskiy gets the start. Yeah. It would be his third in a row. I wouldn't be shocked if he does get the start, and maybe Johansson plays Monday. The Lightning have a back-to-back coming up Friday, Saturday after Thanksgiving. So Johansson's going to get one of those games. I think Johansson is going to get one of the next three. I don't know if they're going to wait for the Calgary game the day before Thanksgiving and then play Johansson 2 out of 3, which is what it would be, or if he's going to get one of the earlier games. Maybe he's in tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, he's given the Lightning great goaltending. That's a question to be answered. Holmberg's return, a question to be answered.
Cernak,
possibly
maybe, right?
Cernak back in, question to be answered. But whoever is in, I think this may be the toughest game the Lightning are going to have against Washington of the three, based on how Washington is playing right now.
That's fair.
Yeah.
We'll do it tomorrow in terms of our pregame and with the game call, and then you and I back at it on Monday. Safe travels today, partner.
Thank you.
All right. We appreciate it. Great
job
to you
tomorrow.
this week. Yep. Should be a lot of fun.
Broadcast.
You got it, sir. Thanks to Steve Ersnick getting all that great sound for you and for you guys participating, as always, at Bolts Radio. Hit us up. We're there for you. I'm Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch